Today's September 18th, and I gave a little bit of a preface to today. I wanted to make a comment about something that I said in a video clip that was made on the 17th, and that was in regards to, well, first of all, I said something about the lighting being bad and being in Hades, and I made mention of it being red, and when I looked at the video clip, it's yellow. But I just wanted to clarify, I'm not colorblind. It really was red from what I could see on the playback of the video thing. The lighting, depending on how the camera is angled, can affect the lighting. The other thing is that I've had somebody who's been tampering with my webcam and deliberately causing fade out sort of effects, deleting information from my camera on a couple of occasions, and changing color or altering the kind of color filter or whatever light filter that's used, and doesn't have anything to do with what I'm doing. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up was the white shirt that I mentioned that Garza was wearing. It really was, he really did change his shirt. It wasn't my imagination. And I'm not sure that he was rolling his sleeves up. Maybe he was putting his watch back on. It could have been that he had taken off his watch and that he was putting the watch back on his wrist, because he was doing something at the cuff when I looked up and he was talking to Raul Buhanda. And I remember that it was significant to me because I just thought, why is he leaving my house in a different shirt than the one that he came in? And that also gave me the idea that, what if they were really not even FBI? Because I just thought that was sort of weird, and nobody, I wasn't too, I mean, they didn't come up to my house with a shirt with them. So that is what I want to say about that. How that happened and why that happened, I have no idea. So I talked about some of the FBI report, and there's more to it that I could address or mention at a later time. Today I sort of wanted to talk about how I met Mike Tanzer, because right after I met him, I met the FBI individuals. And it might be a coincidence, but it might not be a coincidence. And if it's not a coincidence, it would be really horrible to discover that he was yet another person who was a federal employee that knew other federal employees and tried to take advantage of me in an incapacitated state. And I wouldn't say that about him on the first night that we met, because he respected the boundaries that I set, and I think that I couldn't judge exactly how much he had to drink. I don't think he was as intoxicated as I was, by any means. He did take a cab home. I went with him in a cab. I basically met him at this club, and I went there with my friend Erica Bellinger. And out of all the different times that I got set up basically to meet somebody that I trusted, and then they would ditch me when I was drunk to leave me vulnerable and basically at the mercy of another federal employee. Of all of those different situations that occurred, that night was not one of them. It was one where I made an unwise decision because of my level of intoxication, and I hurt Erica's feelings, and I always felt sorry for that, and I apologized, and she never forgave me. After being my friend since high school, since I was 15 or 16 years old. after just, over 10 years of being friends, for whatever reason, after I chose to go with him instead of her at the end of the night, which was the first time I ever did something like that and the only time I ever did anything like that, she refused to talk to me and said that was the end of our friendship. So I really felt that was extremely harsh. I don't know what kind of politics she was getting involved in at the time, because I do know that she was studying accounting at George Fox College, and she wanted to work for the FBI too. So she wanted to be a forensic accountant, basically somebody who does investigation of criminal accounting. And she and I talked about, how I was wanting to possibly join the FBI as an attorney, and she told me that she actually met FBI individuals at her college and talked to them, and she wanted to work for them. So I really don't know exactly why that specific event was something that she was going to then distance me from. I mean, after she wasn't just an associate or an acquaintance. She was one of my closer friends in high school. I mean, I spent a lot of time at her house. I had a best friend, and then I had a couple of close friends, and she was one of them. So I remember that she had wanted to be she sort of sought my friendship when I had moved to this high school, and she kind of kept wanting to be friends with me. And then at first, I just kind of, I wasn't maybe as interested, and then we did become friends. And we spent time at each other's house and did other things, other events out and whatever. So she then had a son as well, and I supported her. I was one of very few individuals who supported her while she was a single mother. And she became a single mother while she was still in high school, which was extremely hard for her. I mean, it was a huge challenge. And I know that she went through a lot. But I say all of that to say that she and I talked on the phone all the time. We visited each other all the time, years and years. And then all of a sudden she told me that she wasn't going to be friends with me. And I remember Mike Tanzer played it off, and he said, well, so much for fair weather friends. But I don't, which is sort of true. I thought after all that time, she just gets rid of me over feeling hurt. That I don't know why she didn't give me any grace on that, because I was intoxicated. She even said she knew how intoxicated I was. And she said, please don't. So it was not a good decision on my part. She was the person driving. She was the designated driver, so it wasn't like I was leaving her to drive, unsafely. We had determined ahead of time that she would be the driver, and it was her car that was there, and it was a very rude, horrible thing for me to do. It's the only time that I've done something like that. But again, I really was shocked that 10, 15 years of friendship went down the drain because of one thing like that. And since there were other things going on, since the Willamette Week article had already come out, and I'd already been talking to the Portland PD, and FBI was involved and I didn't know it, I really do think that part of her motives were political, which is really horrible to say. And I would hope that even though time has passed, she would at least be honest enough to vouch for me on the things that I've said about Robin Bechtold and her witnessing that incident, and that she would also vouch for my degree of honesty when I'm recounting some of these things, because I'm not lying about any of it. So basically, I went to this club with Erica Ballinger, and it was fun. We danced, and then I danced a little bit with Tanzer. He wanted to do a lot of kind of things on the floor that were slightly exhibitionist, and I wasn't comfortable with that, so I kept like dancing around my stomach, and I felt weird having a man putting his hands on my waist and then staring at my waist while he was, I mean, he was sort of like crouched down really low. It sounds really weird, but I don't know, you know, how, I mean, I guess, yeah, just in a normal dance, he wasn't, you know, sometimes people will stand, sometimes they'll sort of shimmy down to the floor, or it's not grinding. I know what grinding is, but it's whatever it is. You know, you're standing and then you kind of move your body down lower and then you can move your body back up. Well, he was doing that, but he was then centering his face directly across from my stomach. And I kept pulling him up, bringing him up from that level because I wasn't comfortable having someone with their face right there at my navel when I was especially in a public place and there were all these people around. So I remember that, but he was a very good dancer too. I remember that as well, and I enjoyed dancing with him because he was a good lead, and I really didn't know that much about dancing. Wasn't very experienced at all. Never had ballroom dancing or any kind of training of any kind. I never had dance lessons. I never had ballroom dance lessons like that you get in high school when you're learning some things. I never knew how to dance my entire life. And I liked it. I liked music. But I could tell if somebody was, I could still tell somehow instinctively if someone was a good lead or not. Because, you know, if they're a good lead, they can make you look like you know how to dance even if you don't. Sometimes. And so I thought that was interesting, and then I remember I again don't really care to know what people's positions are, and I don't want to base how I meet somebody on what they do and what family they're from. So I said, you know, so what's your last name? Just tell me your last name. I don't know the first. And so he said it was Tanzer. And I told him my last name. And I think that I asked him something about what he was interested in or his hobbies, but I wasn't trying to find out exactly his career or whatever, but he said that he worked with parasites. And I wasn't sure what that meant, but I found out that he does some sort of chemistry / biology, pharmaceutical studies, basically in a lab looking at things under a microscope. And so then there was a group that was up in the balcony, and they were watching me, and some of them I could tell, I had the sense that some of them were not nice people at all. I don't know who they were, but both he and I were being watched. And then I always bought my own drinks. He offered to buy me a couple drinks and I declined. I purchased my own drinks. I knew how many I'd had, and I always tipped well for my drinks too. I tipped the bartender at that time in my life whenever I could. I usually tipped $2 per drink. And usually my drinks were only about $7 or so, because I usually got just a vodka soda, something simple. So depending on where I was at, I don't think I ever paid more than $7 for a vodka soda. And they had some rum drinks too that night that they were featuring, which were a little cheaper. I think Erica possibly bought me one. But in general, or maybe she bought one for herself and I bought one, but pretty much I paid for my own drinks.